Yeah. Welcome again. Thank you very much for attending the session. We are going to present now the session of our sponsors, B2Bill. We're going to touch different topics which are of great interest for ourselves, that we are in the payments industry. In terms of, for as I was saying this morning, for us with experience in the fraud world, we know that France is unfortunately a country with a high amount of chargebacks, a high amount of fraud, and today we're going to learn how we can prevent this, or we can try to prevent these situations, and also how we can optimize conversion rates and some measures we can merchants can take to improve conversion rate. I leave it here to Dr. Vanu from B2Bill, and we want to make this a communication session. So feel free to question and to stop if you want to make a question, or if you want to comment, if you want to contribute. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Victor. Today will be joining me for this session Jean-Pierre, which is an expert in fraud prevention. He worked in the gambling industry and as a fraud analyst at PayPal, and is now the head of fraud at B2Bill. And Benoit from Payment Wall, he is in charge of payment partnerships at Payment Wall. Okay, so let's start the session today. Fraud management versus conversion rate. Why did we choose this topic? Well, basically, from my experience as a sales manager at B2Bill, when I'm talking with casual gaming companies, always I have the same question. What can you do for us to increase our turnover? But unfortunately, lately, I never have the question, what can you do for us to help us with fraud issues? Why? Well, let's take a look at the situation today, if it works. No. It worked at the beginning of the session, but now during the session it doesn't work anymore.
It's a feature.
It's a feature. I mean, I'm pressing the green button. Okay. Okay, now it's working. It seems to be working. Okay, so what is the status today? Well, I believe we all agree no one uses 3DS in casual gaming. Why? You hate 3DS, we hate 3DS, and we all know it makes acceptance rate go down. Acceptable fraud rate, you don't have any issues. When you ask casual gaming companies if they have any issues with fraud, we always have the same answer, no problem from that perspective. Acceptance rate, it's okay, not too bad. You are on average around 80%, I believe. Some are going up to 85% or 90%. So you are pretty happy about that too, but of course there is margin for improvement. And afterwards, yeah, of course, the payment providers, we are there to always challenge you, to help you increase your acceptance rate, and we always promise you to do the best, and of course better than our competitor you are working with in general. Well, the problem with that is the biggest French casual game publisher was in exactly the same situation as you. For, I believe, 8 or 10 years that he has been on the market, he never had any issue with fraud. And there are not, unfortunately, a lot of big French publishers in casual gaming anymore. So he's, I believe, the biggest. And of course, he had a huge experience. He has millions of euros in transactions every month. So he knew what he was doing. He was working with one of the biggest PSP in the gaming industry. He was working with the biggest bank in France as an acquirer, and everything went very smoothly for about 8 to 10 years. And at the beginning of this year, and at the end of last year, he had a pretty big wake-up call. All of a sudden, during a period of 3 to 6 months, his chargeback rate increased to 10%. What happened afterwards? Well, I guess you all know, Visa and MasterCard come to you and say, if you don't do something very, very, very quickly, we are going to cut your meat. And what they can do very, very quickly, well, the only solution is to implement full 3DS on all the transactions. So basically, what happens is a decrease in acceptance rate by 20 to 30%. Why does this happen? Well, basically, he realized that when things are going well, it is always due to the payment provider. He must do a very, very good job, and this is the reason why there is no fraud. But the problem is, when things went wrong, no one was responsible. The PSP said, not my fault. Go see your acquiring bank. They didn't pass the information to me. The acquiring bank said, no, 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 no. We passed the information to the PSP, but the PSP was not able to manage the information in a timely manner. And at the end, well, who pays the bill? The game publisher. And he continues to pay the bill today because he's still in full 3DS, and he still didn't find a solution to manage this problem. Afterward, he also realized that the anti-fraud management tools that are in place in most of, or that are in place for most of the payment providers today are basically what we call static anti-fraud tools. What does that mean? Well, basically, they base themselves on blacklists or known pattern types. This works very well, but the problem is fraudsters innovate, and they do not stop, and they are not using the same tools and the same techniques they were using years ago. If it arrives to one of your competitor or another casual game, it's okay, because the PSP has the time to see the problem. And I mean, the game publisher I was talking earlier can be thanked by all of you, because now, most certainly, his PSP knows how to fight that kind of fraud. But for him, it is already too late. And another thing that is important is there was, and in most cases, there is no human monitoring. So everything is based on tools that are technical tools that are automized, but nothing is looked at in real time. So our first advice for you would be to go and to challenge your payment provider you have today, and go and ask in general payment providers, how do they handle fraud for you? And do not stop at a simple answer like, don't worry about it, we will take care of it, we have a lot of experience in the field. Make sure you know what tools are in place in order to help you prevent this. So, what are the solutions at our disposal today? Well, basically, in order to fight fraud, we need information. Who has information today? You have information, you have a lot of information about your players. Your payment provider has information, has financial information. Depending on where he is in the payment chain, he can have more or less information about the credit cards that are being used, what is the history of the credit card, etc., etc. Afterwards, we have a tool. We don't like it. It is 3DS. But it is a tool that is there in order to fight fraud. So what would be the ideal fraud prevention system? Well, basically, the ideal for fraud prevention system would be to take all of this data, combine it, analyze the data in real time, take a decision regarding a transaction, is it fraud or not, and if you suspect a transaction to be fraud, well, apply 3DS. And this way, you are going to make sure that if there is a fraudulent transaction, but if it goes through 3DS, you won't have any issues regarding chargebacks. I'm going to let Jean-Pierre speak a little bit about how we are using all this information on our side. Jean-Pierre?
Thank you, Tudor. Okay, so yeah, what I'm going to try to do right now is first to give you some pieces of advice as per what you should expect from a payment solution, and what is going to allow the payment solution to be very, very efficient and allow you to make financial savings. And then, of course, I'm going to show you how we handle things at B2B to give you an idea of what can be done in terms of risk management and fraud prevention. The very first key and the most essential notion in risk management is relevance. You have to require from your payment solution that they are relevant. And of course, you can't just wait for them to tell you, oh, we're efficient, we decrease your fraud and everything. No, you want KPIs. You want your payment solution to be able to provide you with indicators that prove that they are efficient and that they generate savings for yourself, and that fraud doesn't cost you as much as it should. So if we're not relevant in our jobs, you're going to lose money anyway, that's certain. So when we come back to the 3D Secure, I do understand why people don't like 3D Secure, because it's true, when you apply 3D Secure on all the transactions on a mid, you're going to have a decrease of acceptance. That's a fact, and we've all experienced it. We know this is true. But as Tudor mentioned earlier, if you start to really use 3D Secure relevantly, and you just apply it for the right transaction at the right time, then it becomes a very useful tool. And the KPIs we would be looking at B2Bill, we would always look at the fraud rate, we will always look at the 3D Secure rate, and we will always look at the acceptance rate in real time, at all time. If I want to stop fraud completely, have a 0% fraud, I mean, I can do that. If you're ready to accept a 30% loss of acceptance, I can do that very easily. Stop all the filters. I will let all the transactions go and make sure that your acceptance becomes as good as possible. I can do that as well, but then you'll see the chargebacks and you'll see the financial loss that's going to come behind, and eventually your turnover is not going to be optimized. So the idea for us is really to be relevant in all our actions, in all our decisions, to make sure that we find this best equilibrium between acceptance and fraud prevention, and make sure that your real turnover is totally optimized. Now I'm going to show you some key criteria that will allow a payment solution to be relevant in all these actions, and these are some aspects of business that you should require from your payment solution that will help you make savings. First thing, the expertise of your partner. Gaming is a very specific industry with very specific purchase behaviors, very specific patterns of transactions. If you have a banking partner who's not aware of all those specificities of gaming, how can they be relevant? I mean, we all know that in gaming you might have some hardcore gamers who will deposit with a certain velocity and who will have a certain amount of transactions. Obviously, you can't stop these guys. You know they are legitimate players because you've known them for a long time, and you know you're not going to have a fraud issue on those. So why put 3D Secure from customers you already know and you know they're good with you? So this is something that is important. You need your banking partner to be aware of your problematics and to be aware and to share your culture so that they can provide you with the best preconization and the best solutions. Collaboration with a merchant. I'm a head of risk for a payment solution. I know I'm good at dealing with fraud. I know the banking procedures very, very well. Maybe I'm the one who knows them the best here in this room today. But I know as well one thing is that you are the merchants, you know your clients, nobody knows your traffic like you know your traffic. And if the payment solution doesn't accept to trust his merchant just a little bit, we're not going to move forward. The more we share information, the more we share our experience, the more we share our data, and the more we will be relevant to take actions in real time and make sure that we make savings for you guys. The tools that are provided to the merchant, they need to be customized and they need to be scalable. What is true, even within the same industry, between merchant A is not necessarily true with merchant B, because you might have different customer bases, you might have tiny different products, you might have different marketing strategies. All these will have an impact on your fraud. And so obviously we need to put the right rules with the right tools that are totally relevant to your situation. Sorry. The scalability and the customization is also very important, because in fraud, as Tudor mentioned earlier, what was true yesterday is maybe not true today, and it's sure not going to be true tomorrow. As you said, the fraudsters evolve, they improve all the time. If we don't give ourselves the possibility to improve with a fraudster, they're going to beat us. Maybe today I'm going to beat them, but they're going to beat me tomorrow, I'm sure of that. So we need to be able to adapt, that's the key. The very last one is, now in the environment of big data we're living in and how we work, we need to be able to consolidate data, accumulate as much data as possible, combine the data, to make sure that we are relevant. Obviously, if I put 3D Secure on all transactions above 30 euros, I will have a lot of false positives. But if I have identified that my fraudsters are German, with German cards, playing from Spanish IPs, making more than 3 transactions in less than a week for that particular merchant, then I'm becoming very, very relevant. And I'm only going to put 3D Secure on these transactions and not on the other ones. And here, I'm going really to target my fraudsters and only my fraudsters. Now, let's talk about data. What we've done at B2Bill is that we provide a rule engine to our merchants. So that allows you to accumulate if-then rules, and you will apply an action in real time depending on some criteria that we have set up in the first place. So the actions that we are going to take, obviously, is either I accept the transaction, I decline the transaction, I trigger 3D Secure, or for some very, very aggressive fraudulent patterns, I can even identify fraud in real time and block the transaction and blacklist the fraudsters to make sure that it never comes back again. If I want to be relevant in making those actions will have an impact on your traffic, will have an impact on your acceptance, and will have an impact on your turnover. If I want to be relevant, I need to be able to cross-reference as many data as possible in real time. So as an acquirer, I have all the data from the banking world. I know what card it is, from which country it's from, which bank, which type of card. That's very useful because you might not treat an owner of MasterCard Gold the same way you're going to treat an owner of Visa Electron, for example. Then I'm going to combine them with all the data that I can see as a PSP from my payment page. I know the navigator, I know the language of the navigator, I know the IP country, and then I can already cross-reference, is it normal that my card is German and my IP is Spanish? That's the first area of combination that I can do. But then, if I give yourself, merchants, the ability to upload some data in real time, then the tool becomes really, really efficient. If I know when the transaction occurs that your client has been your client for more than 5 years and you never had an issue, obviously I'm not going to put 3D Secure on this client because I know he's safe. But if you want, we can build up rules together and have a specific behavior for the very new clients that you might have. A client that just opened his account, that's the very first deposit of his life, maybe this one you will allow him to play a little bit at the beginning, but after the 5th transaction in 2 days, a guy that you've never seen before, maybe you want to control the risk, and maybe that's when you might need to put just one transaction in 3D Secure, and then you know, because you were in doubt, and then you know, because if the 3D Secure is applied, and it worked, and the protocol worked well, then you know that you have identified your client, and then you know he's going to be able to play as much as he wants for his whole life, and you're not going to have a chargeback because you know this is the right customer. Then I'm just going to show you the whole system we're working on with Rentability Web B2Build, because the rule engine is a very, very powerful tool, but if you don't have the data to manage the relevance and to control the performance of your rules, it doesn't work. You might have the best Formula One in the world. If the driver is blind, he's going to crash your car. And the rule engine is exactly the same. You can have the ability to combine as many rules as you want. If you don't have the data analytics that show you by figures that you're winning money here and you're losing money there, you don't know what you're doing. And so what we've done is that in real time, we have our rule engine, stops the transactions, the fraudulent transactions, and make decisions in real time. But then I have 2 teams of mine who are controlling the traffic and who are controlling all the performance, all the key indicators of performance. The fraud investigators, they're going to look at all the transactions that went through the rule engine, but there's still a high level of suspicion. You know that 3D Secure in some countries, you're not totally sure of the way the authentication protocol occurred. If it's only a date of birth, every fraudster is able to provide the date of birth with once he has the details of the card. So you want to look at those. In the gaming industry, where the average basket is quite low, if you have a transaction of 500 euros, I mean, you can take the risk of accepting it in real time, but you want someone to look at it afterwards to make sure that this guy was not a fraudster, because 500 euros is a lot to lose when you have the chargeback afterwards. There are some countries where you want to have a special monitoring, and you can have a team who will look after those transactions. A lot of operators now in the market, they can provide you with a good tool in real time, and they can provide you with a team of investigators in near real time. But what makes all the difference is the data analytics behind. Because if you have also analysts who look at the performance at all time, who look at your 3D Secure rate at all time, look at your fraud rate at all time, look at your acceptance rate at all time, you know that if you need to adjust, you can adjust straight away. And it goes one way and the other. If you stop too many transactions and your acceptance rate is low, then you can readjust and make sure that you're going to accept a bit more transactions. If you don't stop all the fraud, well, then you need to adjust to make sure that you have a filter that is going to be relevant enough to be able to stop all the fraud. We just have one last level of intervention in our system. We also have a chargeback team who are going to check the validity of every chargeback that we receive. That's quite important for you. I know that Benoit is going to discuss this issue as well later on, but because you have a lot of friendly chargebacks, it's really important that you have a chargeback expert to look at the validity of the chargebacks and make sure that we can dispute them, or at least build a case to try to dispute it in the banking system. The second thing that the chargeback team does in our system is that they look at the typology of the chargebacks. If we have a fraudulent chargebacks, that's a loss. I mean, that means that my teams were not good enough to be able to stop it in real time and in near real time. So we always want to make sure that every chargeback, we have a rule to make sure that what happened once, it's never going to happen again. And that's the whole solidity of the system, which allows us to improve all the time and to be updated with the most recent fraudulent patterns and make sure that we're always relevant in what we do at all times.
Cool. Thank you, Jean-Pierre. So now let's say you work with a good payment provider, but even how good it is, you end up with some chargeback. Well, let's take the example of the friendly fraud. Kid come back from home on Wednesday, day off, get excited, you get a good grade at some exam, and start spending money on some games. Play the games, use the card of daddy, spend a bunch of money on the card. Daddy receives a bank statement at the end of the month. Holy cow, $250 for some games. Well, go talk to the kid. The kid say, I quite didn't do that, it must be a bug. Well, comes the friendly fraud. Well, that comes from a few things. First is, probably didn't use really secure, so easy, you could just put the card details, goes through. Why? It's a player that was in the game for 5 years, we have the data, we know he's playing. Well, $50 for a relevant transaction. So payment provider let it go through. Well, what we didn't know is, nowadays, the banks tend to be pretty lenient sometimes with chargebacks, especially some of them, especially some card networks. So it's pretty easy to do a chargeback. When actually Tudor invited me, oh, why don't you join our panel to talk about chargeback? You guys are doing a great job of chargebacks. I'm like, sure. We discussed about it, and we discussed about France. And he's like, oh, a bunch of gaming publishers are complaining about France having a very high chargeback rate. So what I did, I asked our fraud team to figure out what's our fraud rate and what's our chargeback rate for France. Surprisingly, it's actually a very low chargeback country. So what we did, we talked with our partner and tried to figure out why that's the case. Well, happened to be in France, if you want to do a chargeback, good luck. It's not as easy as it sounds. You need to go see your banker, get the paperwork done. Most of the time, your banker will cancel your card. You might need to go to the police, file a report saying, hey, it's a fraudulent transaction. Why? It comes from one specific point of the card banker network. It's not Visa, it's not MasterCard, it's definitely not American Express. They only accept fraudulent chargebacks. You cannot say, this is a chargeback because I didn't receive the goods. That's just impossible. So those are actually the top chargeback reason code for chargebacks. As you know, when you file a chargeback, it all starts from you going to your branch, explaining to your banker that, yeah, you kind of didn't do the transaction, or you kind of didn't receive the goods, or you receive it, but it's not what you wanted. Well, in that room, we all do digital transaction. We only do digital content. We all deliver the good instantly or quasi-instantly. There is no fraudster company that they say, oh, we shipped the good, we didn't ship it. So the code that we're receiving kind of describes the reason why you are contesting the transaction. And as you can see, it's pretty vague. And that vagueness creates a bunch of quack in the process. Let's look really at how chargeback works. So you go to your bank, you say, hey, I paid for that. I didn't really pay for that thing. Well, the bank has a few options. They listen to you, say, oh, yeah, you're a good customer, let me file the chargeback. They file your chargeback, and they put a reason code. Again, let's remember the rule. Card banker network, only fraudulent transaction. You can only say, hey, that's fraud. Someone stole my card, this is what happened. Now on the Visa or MasterCard network, different story. You can say, hey, I didn't receive the goods, or hey, I didn't do the transaction. So your bank files the paperwork, send that thing to Visa. Visa figure out who is the acquirer, send the paperwork to the acquirer, or send the transaction to the acquirer. The acquirer send the letter to the merchant. Sometimes it's email, when it's good. When it's very bad, it's letter, like letter by the mail. So imagine you make, I don't know, 200,000 transactions a month. You have 1% chargeback rate. You have, what, 2,000 letters that come to your mail that you need to handle. Good luck with that. And, well, you open the letter, you figure out, okay, this transaction, okay, let me look at my data. Let me look at what's going on here. great, I have the data, I'll try to answer the chargeback. At that point, you have two things. You just say, great, my bad, I didn't ship the goods. Okay, let's let the chargeback go through. Or you can dispute it. Well, when you dispute your chargeback, you might want to send a good package. You don't say, no, it's bullshit. I don't like, it's not a chargeback. I can't test that thing. You want to send a really good package that explains why you do dispute your chargeback. Now, you send your dispute. Go back to Visa or to card banker. Go back to the issuing bank. And then they look at it and say, okay, still not good enough. Well, at that point, on Visa and on card banker, stop right there. You cannot contest chargeback again. Then you go to remediation, meaning Visa or card banker will go and investigate chargeback for you. At that point in time, well, you put $500 on the table, they put $500 on the table. Whoever wins, get the $500 on the other side and get the money back. Because why? While you involve the network, you might want to pay the cost for that thing. Now, if you look at MasterCard, they are a bit more flexible. They are like discussions. They are like French people. They like to discuss a lot about different things. So, okay, well, first chargeback, I disagree with you. Great, I disagree with you. Okay, let's send a second contestation to the acquirer. Send a second contestation. You can respond again, say, no, I really believe this is not true. This is not a chargeback. At that point, if you disagree again, go to remediation. One thing to know. You can do that as many times as the reason code is the same. Like, you can do this flow with one reason code for chargeback. So let's take the case of friendly fraud. While you call and say, let's take care of a MasterCard, and you call and say, oh, I didn't do the transaction. I don't recognize it. Guess what? It went to fully secure. So you did do the transaction because it authentified you. You file a chargeback. As a PSP, we look at it and say, that's literally bullshit. It did do the transaction. So we respond to the bank and say, well, look, this is a fully secure details. You got it authentified. We got the Y answer. Everything is fine. Go back to the bank, to the issuing bank. Issuing bank, look at it, say, talk to the user, say, well, looks like you did the transaction. Guess what now? Well, you know what? I quite did do the transaction, but I didn't receive the goods. Great. Back to square one. We do it again. And again, and again, and again. I guess if you have a good relationship with your banker, you probably get your money back, most likely. Well, chargeback. That's kind of the penalty. It's kind of the OFAC list of Visa, MasterCard, and card banker, you know. They all think that merchants are terrible. Well, yeah, we are. Well, sometimes you might want to be a bit smart. You might want to not deal with chargeback and maybe issue a refund. And that comes from what we're discussing, like you need to be in touch with your user. Sometimes it's not even worth fighting a chargeback. Let's say you talk about a $15 transaction. Well, yeah, you get charged maybe $10 for your payment provider or $15 or whatever from chargeback. Yeah, you got charged for it, but do you really want to dispute it? It's another fee. Times that you're really involved in the case. If you go to remediation, it's another $500. Sometimes you might want to say, okay, well, I lost it. Now, what can we do to make that thing work, you know? You need to know your right. You need to know how you can fight those chargeback. Sometimes you will get chargeback for invalid reason. You can fight that, you can dismiss the chargeback this way. You need to make sure, you know, because we're in a world where everyone wants to make money, there is this wonderful threshold that some of you might be, you know, aware of with Visa, MasterCard chargeback, and card banker. You want to make sure you're on top of your threshold. You want to know how much chargeback you have compared to the volume of transaction you get. Why? Because depending on your volume, different rules might apply, and you might be penalized even more. Well, you, of course, that's indeed, you want to stop fraudulent transaction to the chargeback. That's the job of your payment provider, your acquirer, even though they don't really do that most of the time. But you want to make sure you put the right fraud filter in place to avoid your chargeback. Well, even you do all your best, you still get chargebacks. You want to collect information from the user. What we do actually at Payment World is a bit different. Since we're also facing from the front-facing with the user, we are in touch with those users. We are able, when we get the user spending, I don't know, 5 times in the same day, $50, to get data from this user. We will get, for example, hey, you know, you spend $50 5 times, give me your ID, give me a proof of address. Then you can match that proof of address with the billing address of the card. Or you can check, okay, is it really your card? Give me your ID, give me your card. Then that gives you data when you want to contest this chargeback. You can send that to the issuing bank and say, look, this is what I got from the user, so don't tell me you didn't do the transaction. You send me your damn ID. So, what you want to do as a PSP also is probably help your merchant. You already lose your money with the chargeback. You want to make sure that you provide the service that they need. So either give them the rules, helps them to understand the rules because they come from that. You want to make sure that the merchant is aware of what they can do, what they cannot do, especially when it's a new merchant that starts accepting credit card. It's very important to understand the concept of chargeback and how that whole flow works, dispute resolution and all the things. Well, again, you want to communicate data between your merchant and your users. If as a merchant, you stay in your side and you never talk to your user, you might end up with more chargeback. But if your user come to your customer service or come to your PSP if they offer customer service and you talk to them, you will get rid of a bunch of chargeback you might have got. Another thing, bank statement identifier. Well, when you process a transaction, if it says XYZ BV and it's not the name of your game, well, you might get some chargeback because if I receive my bank statement and I see on my bank statement a name that I don't recognize, I'll be questioning the charge. I might be asking my bank to see, hey, what that thing is about. If you do a lot of volume, you might also want to have a team in charge just of chargeback. As Jean-Pierre said, that's something that is very important. You can really make the money back with that thing. Yes, it's overcost, it's overhead cost, but when you get a lot of transaction volume, that's totally worth doing it. Now let's look at the threshold. So Visa, MasterCard, and all other brands came up with some different thresholds based on your number of chargeback. One thing to know, the chargeback threshold are calculated on the number of transactions, not on your volume necessarily. So let's say you do 200,000 transactions a month, and you get 20 chargeback, you are good. Because the volume that everybody knows is the 1% rule. You can apply that rule as pretty much the rule. If you are below 1%, you are fine. So this month you get 20 chargeback. Look at your volume of last month, divide that by the number. If you are below 1%, you are fine. Now, if you get above, you have different problems. For MasterCard, let's look at the number. The CMM is the first level of the chargeback. It's the first program you can get in. If you get more than, I think, 1% of chargeback, you go into that program. If you stay 3 months in the same program, you kind of graduate from this one, you go to the next one, which is even worse. The next one is ECM. It's over 1.5% of chargeback, I believe, and minimum 200 transactions, I think. This one, you get more scrutinized from MasterCard, and you need to put the action plan in place to reduce your chargeback. Most likely at that time, your acquirer will call you and say, hey, stop the thing, put your free secure on. That would be the first reaction they will have. Visa has the exact same program in place. And American Express, it's actually on top of all that thing. So not only they have the nice fraud program, but they also have the inquiry from the user. So if you, as a merchant, get too many inquiries, they send you a nice letter in the mail every month to make sure, hey guys, you are getting a bunch of inquiry from American Express. What's going on? Well, one thing to know, MasterCard, Visa, card banker rely on the banks to do the issuing of the card. Amex self-issues the card. You know how easy it is to do the chargeback on American Express? Like, it's just ridiculous. You just go on the app, look at the transaction, and say, I dispute the transaction. Done. Chargeback filed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. So if you have any questions, and as Victor said, I understand some of you have issues with French payments, and there is a bunch of friendly fraud. Please do not hesitate maybe to give us some more specifics, because as Benoit said, and as Jean-Pierre said, we didn't really, from our experience, have this kind of issue, so please do not hesitate. And maybe the conclusion to all of this would be, please, when you go talk with your payment provider, do not just ask, what can you do for me to help me increase my turnover, but ask him, what can you do for me to help me prevent fraud, and even if I do not have a problem today, help me prevent issues in the future. Thank you, and we are accepting your questions.
Do we have any question? Okay, I have one from my side. There is a law in Germany regarding data protection, in which you are not allowed to keep the data of your users for more than, I don't know if it's a week or a month. I hate this regulation. I really don't like it because you just cannot do fraud prevention. It's just impossible. The only way you can get around is thanks to the session we had before to justify VAT. Once you say, oh, I'm keeping this for VAT reasons, then you can justify the reason why you're keeping data like IP or emails or topics. But from your point of view, is there something, are you aware of this kind of regulations? Because yeah, it's very easy to say, okay, give me your ID, and then I send it to the banks. In Germany, that's illegal. That you just cannot do this. And from your point of view, what are you guys doing, and what are you guys doing towards the European Union to say you cannot have this kind of laws because you're just giving free room to fraudsters? The fraudsters are going to go. It's just like an open party for fraudsters.
Okay, great. Well, European, it's a nice region, I guess, very protective from the user rights. Are you guys, I'll go back to this topic. Are you guys familiar with PCI DSS in the room? Anyone passed a PCI DSS audit? Well, the rule is simple. Technically, you are not supposed to store card data forever. You need to put a timeline. Why? Because they want to make sure you don't sit on data for no reason. If you justify it with a business reason why you keep the card data, you can keep it. Same applies to the idea. If European Union knock at my door tomorrow morning, and I guess I'll knock at the door very soon, I'll be in Brussels very soon for that, you can justify it. Say, look, I have two choices. First of all, this data, I keep it securely. Of course, if you put that on a regular shared net folder on your network, might not be the best way of doing it. But if you justify why you want to keep it, and how you keep it, and that you get rid of this data after a while because, yeah, the user stopped playing the game, then you have a case that you can make.
But sorry to interrupt. In which country?
We do that for all the country actually, and same for Europe.
That, I don't think that's the case for Germany. You cannot justify something for business reasons. This just doesn't exist in Germany. I mean, it would be great, but I don't think that's the case.
There are actually two points I just wanted to add. Obviously, first point, it goes with the national legislation. So as you said, we might not have the same approach depending on the country where we're working in. But then what Benoit was discussing, he was mentioning the principle of need-to-know policy. And we as acquirers have a need-to-know policy regarding money laundering and terrorism financing. So we can use that. Anyway, if we want to keep the data, we can always use that. Does that reply to your question?
Any other questions? Mark.
Please do. How are you guys going to deal with the new changes from Visa and MasterCard regarding the chargeback costs and also the consolidation? Is your system actually prepared for the coming changes?
Again, Jean-Pierre.
This is a very interesting question, and another interesting point is that if you ask me the question, you won't have the same answer if you ask Benoit. First, because I'm an acquirer within the GCE carte bancaire environment. So we, French, deal directly with the CB, and then CB negotiates with Visa and MasterCard. So we're not totally impacted by all these. Those negotiations are above our heads, I would say. And then we French arrange ourselves a separate way, actually. So we don't really, it's not going to impact us a lot in France. Then outside France, I suppose it's a direct discussion with the schemes, and then it will depend on the acquirers who are going to adapt their commercial strategy, I suppose, and who's going to take the hit.
If I can add to that, do you think, and this is more or less an opinion point, so you can't go wrong on this, I guess, but do you think that it's actually fair that because now that chargebacks are going to be able to be batched essentially up to a certain amount, that the French system will follow suit? Because if bigger companies like Visa and MasterCard are doing this, do you see that the French banking system, or at least within your scheme, would be following suit with this?
I don't know if it's my position to confirm whether I think it's fair or not, but it's true that we're living in very, very different worlds in France compared to other countries. There are pros and cons in both systems. In France, everything is not perfect, absolutely not perfect at all. but yeah, the system has issues sometimes, and then that's where also it's very important for you to have a payment solution that is able to cope with all those problematics and to be able to service you with the best efficiency as possible, and then yeah, you need to get the right acquirer because sometimes it's tough and stuff.
What do you guys think?
What do I think? Well, we are not an acquirer, we are a PSP. So what do I personally think? I think based on the network, there is different regulation that you need to follow, and you cannot do much about it. What do I personally think? I like the old way better. I like the current way better. I think, I mean, Visa, MasterCard play the game changing the rule pretty often. You heard about the Durbin Amendment in the US. That changed a lot of things. A lot of acquirer, didn't change the pricing. So yes, they pay less, but the merchant pays the same. So I think it's good to come up with the law, but the best is to apply it and to make sure the acquirer apply it. I don't know how acquirer will apply that. I don't see them coming back to the merchant and say, oh, guess what, I changed your term of contract. I don't think they will. I don't think so. So it's a major change on the chargeback chain, yes it is. Would that be applied really on the merchant side? I don't know. I don't know how they could go back to all their merchants and change it. We have 50,000 merchants. If I need to go back to 50,000 merchants, have them sign a 50,000 new agreement with new rules, that's a lot of work.
Well, I mean, in a sense, yes, but on the other hand, you're talking about, I think the number is up to 250 euros, somewhere around here, that you're allowed up to 25 transactions that are batched. So for small merchants that are doing microtransactions, which is actually very common for our industry.
It is, yeah.
That's actually going to be an advantage because we're talking about the fact that I'm not paying 25 chargeback fees now,
But
one.
But
That's a big thing for us.
the thing, we can do it as a PSP, but I don't see major acquirer doing it. From a technical standpoint, I don't think they will update all their contract. Can we do it? Yes, because all our contracts are web-based. It's easy. You just push a pull at someone, boom, done. Can we apply the rule? Very easy. We are a tech company. We can easily update our pricing structure on that. What I'm saying is major acquirer, let's say old school acquirer that are not really a PSP and just are an acquirer from a financial standpoint, I don't see them reapplying this rule very easily.
Yeah, if Visa and MasterCard say do it, they've got
But they will say, yes, I don't pay for it as an acquirer, but I'll charge my merchant the same way. They might not apply that to the merchant. Same as Durbin. Durbin agreement is saying, so let's take the exact same example. So let's take Visa is saying do it, while the Fed and the US government said do it. Change your rate for a regulated debit card in the US from, I think, how much was it?
the Durbin Amendment, right?
Yeah, so basically what they did, all the large banks in the US, all the large issuers, get less interchange for a debit transaction. Now they are getting 0.5% and 21 cents for every debit transaction. Great. Yes, the issuer make less money. But what about if you, as a merchant, have a blended rate with your acquirer? Meaning the acquirer show you a flat 2.5% plus 30 cents. Doesn't impact you. Doesn't at all. Same thing for chargeback. Might not impact you at all. The acquirer might not pass you the benefits of that. Then it's your guy's job to negotiate with your acquirer or PSP to get it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a hint from the merchant side then, that to check that, if I'm a merchant, I'd be looking at my chargebacks that I'd be having. And if I see that I'm being charged for every single chargeback, that means that you guys are doing it wrong.
And I would agree with you.
And then that's why I would say that merchants do have a way to check it and to actually enforce it. Because then they can go complain to Visa and MasterCard, for example, and say, look, these guys are not following the rules, cause problems for the PSP, and then, that's how that chain works.
Sure, but I don't foresee merchants doing that very often. Actually, most of the merchants are not as educated as you guys are in the room, actually. And the big crowd of the merchants, now we are talking about large company against small business. Small business don't even look at the statement. And the bulk of the transaction comes from very small business. Large company, yes, they will look at it. Of course, they would be, hey, January 1st, this is a new rule, please apply it to my account. Well, small business, they don't have time to do with that thing. And it's not worth their while doing with that thing, actually, most of the time. But company with a lot of microtransaction, of course they will look at it. And of course they will push the PSP, which in its side will push the acquirer to update the rules. That's how it works from the PSP side.
Okay. Any more questions? One question from my side. Do you guys pay in payment wallet? Do you accept Bitcoin?
Is there any banker or regulator in the room? Let me ask.
Okay, you can.
Yes.
Okay.
So you want the true story? Yes, we do accept it. We accept through our gateway, meaning we do not touch the money. We are just acting as a regular gateway. Now, is it worth accepting it?
No. The question was more towards the fraud. Which kind of fraud do you see with Bitcoin?
Well,
if any.
Let me continue what I was saying.
Okay, sorry.
We had like, I think 3 transactions so far with Bitcoins. 3? 3, yeah. So no fraud.
Wow. Okay, that's the future.
And we deal with a bunch of different merchants. Yesterday we were talking with Mark. I think Mark and someone from Jagex also talking about Bitcoin. I mean, I think it's a very buzzword. I think it's very cool to accept Bitcoin. I mean, a big e-commerce in the US accepted it. Forgot the name now. They sell furniture online, Overstock. I'm very curious to see really how many transactions they got from it. Because I don't see my mom, who shop on Overstock, paying with Bitcoin. I just don't see it. For hardcore games, yes, mine makes sense. We do have hardcore games, even though we didn't see a huge spike at it. I mean, I'm telling you, 3 transactions. It's just ridiculous. So, yes, we accept it. It brings a whole new set of, negotiation with your banker and your regulator, I guess, because they are very, very, very strict on that thing, especially US regulator. New York said, I mean, the state of New York said, yes, we are cool with Bitcoin. You actually can apply for a license in the state of New York for digital currency. So other states will follow because New York is kind of driving the regulator in the US. Once New York state says something, other states tend to follow. But is there a need? I'm not so sure. They're saying that Bitcoin overpassed Western Union in volume of transaction. Yeah, maybe they transit a lot, but are they being redeemed a lot? I don't know.
Okay, well, again, I guess that's it. Nobody else has questions. Then it's.
I have one small question. All of you guys have seriously not tons of chargebacks from France?
0.05%. I can use the exact number.
Because my experience is that the French are the world champions of chargeback.
Okay, hold on. I have my phone over there, but I have the data. No, from more experience, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Probably like me a lot. No, we actually did discuss that just before.
Because we basically mostly it's friendly chargeback when they break the rules of the game, they ban for a period of time, and it comes 6 months of chargebacks.
French people did the revolution. They really like to revolt and go on strike, so that's possible. They might not like to be banned.
Yeah, except the terms and conditions are clear on what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do. But if they're unhappy with an update in the game, if they're unhappy with the rule breaking, that's basically
they'll make it. They let you know. They let you know they are not happy with it. Yeah. No, but actually we discussed another point. When you are actually an issuer of card, when the transaction gets sent to you, you see who is sending this transaction. You see the name of the merchant, you see the MID, and you see the country from the merchant is from. And we're discussing, would we get less transaction, less charge because we are from France? Actually, we are not from France. We have MIDs from France, yes, but our MID is not from a French company. So that doesn't seem to be the answer.
What's your refund rate, by chance?
I wouldn't know that, but it's not outrageous. No, we are not refunding to avoid chargeback. We refund when it's really mandatory or when we know it's going to go to chargeback. We use that kind of as a last resort. If we know this user is going to do a chargeback, you might want to do a refund.
I had a case of, I don't know how you call this in the chargeback business, but they charge back twice.
The same transaction?
Yep. They charge back.
A bug?
No, it was a French user. They charge, okay, I think it was a fraudster, but it was my mistake. I was checking the transactions. I got through 4,000 euro. So it hurt. We challenged the chargeback. We won.
The first one?
I couldn't believe it. And then he charged back again.
Oh, yeah, that's why so what he did, he charged back once with a reason code X. He won, was not really satisfied, charged back again for another reason code. That happened.
But then,
that do happen.
Again, it's France. Nobody else has done this. And I have fraud in China, had fraud in Mexico, and Mexican. And my God, they really love to do chargebacks as well. But it's like, really, the champions, I agree, it's France.
Yeah, but So you said you had a chargeback. You disputed it. Actually, you had you had one chargeback.
Okay.
You disputed it. You
It's
won
a
the
group.
case.
It was like, I don't know, 20 of 200 euro each. I don't know how I missed that. I really was very angry with myself. But yeah.
But then they were disputed. You won the
I
dispute.
won, and then
And
after
then they
3
issued
months...
it again in France.
In France, yeah. In France.
That
And I had-
shouldn't happen. That shouldn't.
Well, that's what happened. And I know because I had the IP, and I was working with retail decisions, and I could see all their IP, where they were based, and I was like...
After you won, did the issuer take you to arbitration?
Which, the first time?
Because maybe the issuer took you in arbitration, your bank didn't tell you, but they didn't want to go in arbitration, and they told you they lost, but they didn't even try. That's a possibility.
Okay, but again, that never happened elsewhere, never. Only in France. And again,
It has to be an isolated case because I'm telling you this shouldn't happen, and I confirm this shouldn't. I confirm this shouldn't happen. Yeah. Yeah. Then, if I can get back to your question as well, because it was a very, very interesting one. Just as we said, during the presentation, I think the reasons that can explain industrial sinistrality on a traffic can be very, very different, and there can be a huge variance between merchant A and merchant B. What I would really like to ask is, within this room, is it really a global tendency that you all are convinced that you have a problem of friendly chargeback in France? Is it like all of you, or is it just you, sir? Because I can...
We discuss it normally at every MRC session we do, and every time. Does anybody have problems with the French chargeback? And we see all they can see.
Yeah, because we mentioned it because we knew that coming here, the question would be asked. And so we discussed it this morning, Benoit and myself, and we have exactly the same stats. France is not so bad. I have more problems in the US than in France, for example. So there can be a lot of issues, if you guys come from the States, right? No? Not at all? German-based, okay.
Do you do your acquiring with a French bank or through like a UK bank or German bank?
The acquiring?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the point.
But yeah, there's one first maybe one first area of possible explanation is that it's true that French bankers tend to treat other bankers a different way from the French bankers. And so when you say within France, French issuer, French acquirer, maybe you're not going to treat the case the same way as the French issuers.
It has to be
right,
something like that because I basically work at all the three big Hamburg-based companies. It's big, and I saw that the big one was the French. At Good Kings was the French.
You have, yeah, you really have two possible areas of explanations anyway. Either it really comes, from your marketing strategy, maybe the descriptor that you have or stuff like that, or maybe it comes from the banking world, and maybe it's a bit of both. And, but, there might be 10, 15, 20 different reasons why you might have more chargebacks than my merchant does. But it's really interesting to see if there's a real tendency, because from what we see, the tendency is heavy. France is okay. And I'm really telling you because that's what I see as well.
They even threaten you when you say, no, you got banned for 3 days for insulting or telling another user to do some things to mothers. You get 3 days. If you give me 3 days, I will charge back.
But, and this...
I include the communication when I answer, when I go to the dispute, I said, this is what you told me here. Email.
This is, yeah.
He threatened to. Okay, we did win a lot of the disputes. We were on the winning side of the disputes, but it was an awful amount of work.
Yeah.
Because they never dispute one transaction. If they dispute 6 months of active play, there were tons of transactions. A guy could come up with 40, 50 transactions.
That's why it's nice to have an acquirer that does the job for you and that really analyzes the validity of all the chargebacks. One of the, I'm just going to give you a secret here, but one of the reasons why we are so performant in checking the validity of the chargebacks, and why we're really willing to do that is that we are exclusively acquirers. Most banks, they're on the acquiring side of business, and they are on the issuing side of business. So if they're too kind with the merchants, at some stage, it's going to impact the way they can treat the users as well, the final clients. We don't have that problem. My only concern is my merchant. And if my merchant is happy, I'm happy, and I don't care about the user behind. And so that could be as well something that is important to you, to have the right banking partner that is really motivated and willing to help you fully and doesn't have any conflict of interest of any kind behind.
Yeah, with the issuing bank in the end, I mean, you're talking about that the user is complaining to the issuer first. So in all honesty, you can fight for us, but in the end, the person who wins overall is going to be the issuing side.
Yes, but at least we try all the time. And we win a good part of the time. If your acquirer doesn't even try, well, then you're sure you're always going to lose. That's certainty.
If you know in our situation, our acquirer is also our PSP, so they've got both together, so they have the same kind of setup as you guys have.
Yeah.
We're actually quite happy with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see much.
Maybe it might come from the fact that you dispute on a Visa or on MasterCard acquirer, not on card banker, because it's two different networks of dispute, actually, I believe.
Yeah. For Visa and MasterCard, there's a really, really tough competition amongst the banks, and even more when it's banks from different continents. Because it's easy, I don't know you, you're so far away, I can hate you in silence, and that's good. Okay. But in France, we're all partners within the Groupement of Economic Interest, carte bancaire, GIECB, that means Group of Economic Interest. So obviously, we try not to be not so aggressive against each other in CB, while in Visa and MasterCard, it's war. Like we're really, really aggressive against each other on the banking world in the international level.